By 1529, Babur had defeated every major enemy who stood against him. He crushed Ibrahim Lodi at Panipat. He shattered Rana Sanga at Khanwa. And to many, the Mughal Empire seemed unstoppable. But Babur knew something others did not. India was still not his. Beyond the great rivers of the east, Afghan warlords were regrouping. Old enemies were returning, and a powerful alliance was quietly forming against the Mughals. If Babur failed now, everything he had fought for could collapse. This was the Battle of Ghaghra, the war that finally decided who would rule Hindustan. After Khanwa, Babur stood stronger than ever before. Delhi and Agra were under Mughal control. Rajput resistance had suffered a devastating blow, but victory brought new problems. Northern India remained unstable. Afghan nobles who once served Ibrahim Lodi refused to surrender completely. Many escaped eastward. There, in the fertile lands near Bihar and Bengal, resistance quietly began rebuilding. Babur understood a dangerous truth. Winning battles was easier than keeping an empire alive. Conquerors throughout history had learned this lesson too late. Rebellion often began after victory, not before it. And now, one surviving rival threatened everything Babur had built. His name was Mahmud Lodi, brother of Ibrahim Lodi. The Sultan Babur had defeated at Panipat. While Ibrahim had fallen on the battlefield, Mahmud survived, and he had not abandoned his ambition. Across eastern India, Afghan chiefs began rallying around him. To many Afghans, Mughal rule still felt temporary. Babur remained a foreign conqueror, a ruler who could still be driven out. Mahmud offered something powerful, the possibility of restoring Afghan rule in Delhi, one final chance to reclaim what Panipat had destroyed. Soon, the resistance became too large for Babur to ignore. But Mahmud Lodi was not acting alone. To defeat Babur, the Afghan resistance needed protection. They found it in Bengal. The Sultan of Bengal, Nasrat Shah, ruled one of the wealthiest kingdoms in India. Rich trade routes flowed through his lands. Rivers connected cities like veins carrying life. And unlike the fractured powers Babur had defeated before, Bengal remained stable, powerful, organized. Officially, Nasrat Shah avoided direct confrontation, but Afghan leaders found shelter within territories linked to Bengal. To Babur, this looked dangerously close to alliance. If Bengal openly joined the war, the Mughals could suddenly face a far larger conflict, one stretching across rivers, forests, and unfamiliar terrain. Babur had won great battles before, but eastern India was different. Here, geography itself could become an enemy. Babur had defeated powerful armies before, but eastern India presented an entirely different problem. Here, the battlefield itself fought back. Wide rivers divided movement. Dense forests slowed cavalry. Marshes turned simple marches into exhausting struggles. In Panipat, Babur used open ground to unleash artillery. At Khanwa, he relied on defensive formations and cavalry maneuver. But here, traditional Mughal warfare could fail completely. Worse still, Mahmud Lodi understood the terrain far better than Babur ever could. Afghan resistance fighters moved quickly through familiar lands. They could disappear into forests, cross hidden river routes, and strike unexpectedly, even more dangerous. Bengal's position remained uncertain. If Sultan Nasrat Shah openly joined the conflict, Babur could suddenly find himself trapped deep inside hostile territory, fighting enemies on unfamiliar land, with rivers cutting apart his army. The risk was enormous, One mistake, and years of conquest could disappear. So Babur adapted. Again, engineers were ordered to strengthen river crossings. Boats were gathered for transport. Cannons were repositioned near waterways. Scouts carefully mapped terrain ahead. Babur was no longer preparing for an ordinary battle. He was preparing for war on land and water. Babur now faced a challenge unlike Panipat or Khanwa. This enemy was not standing on an open battlefield. Rivers protected them. Forests slowed movement. And the eastern lands of India turned warfare into something far more unpredictable. Charging cavalry alone would not win here. Neither would simple artillery. Babur understood immediately. This campaign demanded something new. Intelligence reports warned him that Afghan forces under Mahmud Lodi remained dangerous. Worse still, if Bengal openly joined the war, Mughal forces could suddenly become trapped between multiple enemies. Babur could not afford hesitation. Delay meant rebellion would spread. Delay meant rivals would grow stronger. So, once again, the Mughal emperor turned to preparation. Engineers were ordered to strengthen river crossings. Boats were gathered. Artillery units were repositioned near strategic waterways. Scouts mapped terrain carefully. Babur was preparing not only for battle, but for a war fought across rivers themselves. And for the first time in his Indian campaigns, water would decide the outcome. As Mughal forces moved east, tension quietly spread across the army. The enemy remained difficult to predict. Mahmud Lodi still carried the legitimacy of the old Delhi Sultanate. Afghan warriors remained highly motivated, and Bengal's intentions remained dangerously unclear. Would Nasrat Shah intervene directly or remain neutral? No one knew. Mughal soldiers camped beside unfamiliar rivers, staring across dark waters toward unseen enemies. The atmosphere felt different from Panipat, different from Khanwa. This was slower, more uncertain, more dangerous in ways soldiers could not easily understand. Somewhere beyond the riverbanks, enemy forces were gathering. Boats waited silently in the darkness. Scouts disappeared into forests and marshes, and every passing day increased the pressure on Babur. He had fought for survival. He had fought for conquest. Now, he fought to secure an empire before it slipped through his hands. On May 6, 1529, the long tension finally exploded into war. Near the banks of the Ghaghra River, Mughal forces confronted the Afghan resistance supported by regional allies. Dawn arrived beneath mist and river fog. War drums echoed across the water. Soldiers prepared in silence. Unlike Panipat or Khanwa, this battlefield looked unfamiliar. Rivers divided movement. Boats carried soldiers across dangerous currents. Terrain restricted cavalry. Every mistake could become fatal. Then, battle began. Artillery thundered across the riverbanks. Cannon fire echoed through mist-covered waters. Smoke drifted across the battlefield. Afghan resistance fighters pushed aggressively, hoping terrain itself would weaken Babur's advantages. But the Mughal emperor had prepared carefully, and hidden within his preparations was a strategy designed to overwhelm resistance from multiple directions at once. What followed was unlike anything Babur had fought before in India. The Battle of Ghaghra became a struggle fought across both land and water. Mughal artillery blasted enemy positions from the riverbanks. Boats moved soldiers between critical positions. Commanders coordinated attacks through terrain designed to create confusion. Afghan resistance fought fiercely. River crossings turned into deadly choke points. Arrows darkened sections of the battlefield. Men disappeared beneath muddy currents. Horses panicked near collapsing embankments. Yet slowly, Mughal organization began overpowering resistance. Babur's commanders coordinated movements with brutal precision. Artillery disrupted enemy formations. River pressure limited Afghan mobility. Communication between opposing forces weakened, and once momentum shifted, Babur struck hard. Mughal forces pressed aggressively across weakened positions. The resistance began collapsing. By the end of the battle, the Afghan resistance had failed. Mahmud Lodi's dream of restoring the Delhi Sultanate collapsed. Once again, Babur had survived. Bengal avoided full confrontation. Nasrat Shah ultimately chose diplomacy over escalation, and for the first time since entering India, Babur's position finally appeared secure. Panipat had opened the gates, Khanwa had defended the throne, but Ghaghra secured the empire. The age of temporary conquest was ending. Mughal rule was becoming permanent. After Ghaghra, no major force remained capable of easily removing Babur from Hindustan. His empire had survived invasion, rebellion, and resistance. But history had one final twist waiting. Because the man who secured the Mughal Empire would not live much longer. Subscribe to Crescent and Steel and march through history with us.